Well, good evening. Welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio. My pleasure to be with you. Got Kirk here. I'm sure we'll have JB as well. JB, are you also with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, welcome. You know, I want to just reference a story, and I want to reference this story because I'm so disgusted in the United States selling weapons to Saudi Arabia and enriching Saudi Arabia. It's so sad. It's almost hard to talk about this, but Murtaza is the name of an 18-year-old boy. 18. Okay, he's not a child anymore. He was arrested and thrown in prison when he was 13. He's been in prison since the last 6 years. A year and a half of that in solitary confinement. When he was first thrown in prison, he was tortured for confessions, just like the Roman Catholic Church used to do. His crime was he rode a bicycle. It was one of those Stingray-type bicycles. It's got a really nice-looking orange one with big widespread handlebars. So he was riding a pair of jeans, a T-shirt, some flip-flops, and he's pictured out in front of a rally. This took place back during what was called the Arab Spring. Yahweh calls it the Arab Sunset. The purpose of the rally was that Saudi Arabia is the most draconian of all of the Islamic countries. The dictators are slime, some of the worst human beings on the planet. And of course, they're only in power because after the World War, the Saud family, a warlord, partnered with Wahib, the most fundamentalist of the Islamic imams, and they went to war against the other clans. And there's pictures of them going to war. I mean, in movies, they're riding horses and with knives, swords over their heads. That's what they had to fight with. Now they buy $100 billion at a clip of U.S. advanced weaponry. And when they finally took over, they, by default, they were more vicious than anybody else and more religious than anybody else, although that's redundant in Islam. They were broke. They couldn't make payroll. There was nothing. Just totally broke. But Great Britain, nothing great about her, assumed that Iran was hers. And they developed oil in Iran, and they told the United States, this is ours. The oil in Iran is ours, hands off. And they began to develop it. And then the United States, as we typically do, we interfered, and of course then we got involved with the Shah, and we wiggled our way in so that we would have equal access to all that oil with Great Britain. And at the same time, we were saying, all right, you want Iran, then Saudi Arabian oil is ours. We just claimed it. And we began to build facilities. And what ended up happening is that when the fiefdom was completely bankrupt, these are pictures back in that day that you wouldn't even be in the realm of credibility to call any city in Saudi Arabia anything other than a third world country. It's just essentially mud buildings. Nothing. As backwards as Islam would take them. And the United States decided that we will give half of the profits of the oil to the warlord Saud that had successfully beaten the rest of his countrymen to a pulp. And that's how they took power. That's how they were enriched. And ultimately, when they got enough money, they nationalized everything. But it is America's fault. That and the fact that Islam creates savages. But it's America's fault. The royal family are disgusting. They are the most prolific use of sex slaves of any people on earth. Hundreds of them. even right now, if you were to go to any one of the palaces in Saudi Arabia, the royal family, you would find scores and scores and scores at each of them of beautiful women that were lured there, who are tortured every day, and who will never leave alive. This boy whose crime at 13 years old was to ride a bicycle and say, we'd like some of the liberties and freedoms that now are enjoyed in other Islamic countries. And peaceful, just riding a bicycle. Well, a couple of years later, the slime buckets of Saudi Arabia arrested him, threw him in jail, where he's been ever since, tortured for a confession. They've labeled him a terrorist. And you know how they've decided they're going to kill him?
No.
They're going to crucify him.
Okay.
Okay.
They're going to crucify him. And this is the same royal family, of course, that took the journalist, Khashoggi, and dismembered him and took him out in bags of their embassy in Istanbul. Same family that Donald Trump thinks is just really swell, and it's worth us selling $100 billion worth of weapons. It's the same family that is more responsible for 9/11 than any other people on Earth. Swell, huh?
Chilling. It's just chilling.
The multiculturalist and the politically correct would say, it's unfair for you to speak out against that. Everybody's entitled to their religion, and that we all have to respect and love one another. And that what they'd say is that I'm bigoted because I'm speaking out against Islam. There's nothing bigoted about it. I don't care if they were reptilian overlords. I'm not even bigoted about them. Doesn't matter. It's a religion that makes them savages. And one of the things that Yahweh makes really clear throughout his testimony, and it's one of the reasons I think that Yahweh is so in love with Dowd. Dowd recognized, as few men have, that there is a horrendous consequence to evil. And that if you don't rid your country of the threat of evil, then you're not doing the right thing by your people. Dowd was a fighter, and he fought to defend his people. It's one of the many reasons that Yahweh loved him, and he's bringing him back as a fighter. We are, depending on whether you're in the early or late group on celebrating Pesach this year, Matzah and Bokurim, we're a day away from Shavuot. What do you think Shavuot means, JB?
It's a festival of weeks, 7 sevens.
Yep. Exactly 7 sevens from Bokurim, firstborn children. 7 sevens plus 1 from Matzah. So it's named Promise of 7. And what happens on Shavuot?
Enlighten.
Yeah.
Power.
It's empowerment.
Yeah. Enrichment. It's the benefits of the covenant are delivered on Shavuot. Not all of them. The benefit of eternal life and perfection, and being an adoption, which are all pretty special gifts, are given on the first 3 Mikra. But the concluding gifts of empowerment, enrichment, enlightenment are afforded to us on Shavuot. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of work to do. And it's not just that God wants us individually to enjoy learning from him and the confidence that grows out of learning from him and the joy that comes from that. He wants his message shared. He wants people like Dowd that will bow their back and call an enemy an enemy. Fight them. Want them condemned. And he wants men and women that will take the time to learn what he has to say, what he is offering, what he's asking in return, and share it. And what's really amazing about that is he's the creator of the universe, the most powerful being in existence. We exist because of him. And yet, what, 1 in a million people today pay attention? And for the better part of 2,000 years, actually 2,500 years, according to Yahweh, and I would assume that he knows what he's talking about, I would say that he probably has a pretty good investigative service with his malach. There wasn't a single person on earth through whom he could work. That's stunning.
That's awesome.
Yosha found 11 of 12 men, 12 men, one of which turned out to not be so good, that he communicated through, and 2 or 3 of them may have written on our behalf. I mean, we're assuming that Matanya was written by the disciple Matanya. We're assuming that Yahowah was written by the disciple Yahowah. We don't know really for sure. We know the other 2 accounts were hearsay. They were not written by eyewitnesses. We really assume, we don't have any way of knowing for certain whether or not Shimon Kefish wrote the letters that are ascribed to him. There's no history of those things. The only thing is really a history of is Paul's letters. Unfortunately, because of the book of Acts being written about Paul by his attaché Luke. But in all of that, we don't have a single word that we can rely on, know confidently that Yosha spoke in the language that he spoke it. So we really don't have very effective witnesses, even among the 2 or 3 that may have written something down to communicate with us. Matanya, and I think it's probably true. I can't prove it, but I think he probably did write a historical account in Hebrew, and Rome did everything they could to destroy it, as did the rabbis. So between the rabbis and Rome, we just don't have a copy left. And so the earliest thing we have is a copy that was made in Alexandria, Egypt, in a very pagan place, a very religious place, in a language that he didn't speak, and the number of people that spoke Hebrew and could read Hebrew at that time was few and far between in Alexandria. And of course, there really weren't any at the time that this thing dates to, in the 3rd century in Israel, because Rome took care of that. And any text that was written in Hebrew, they burned. So one of the reasons that we're so lucky to have the Qumran scrolls that they didn't know were buried in that cave. But we really, from what Yahweh said, that throughout this long chasm of time, there wasn't a single person through whom he could communicate. It'd be pretty frustrating, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how in the world do you fulfill the promise of Shavuot if there's not a single person on the earth that's celebrating it?
Well, you announce it. You can still tell the story.
Even now, I would bet there are less than 1,000 people worldwide celebrating Shavuot. Religious Jews, they don't celebrate this one. They have Purim that they substitute for it. It's like they don't celebrate Towrah either. They substitute Rosh Hashanah. So they're not celebrating it, and if they did, it would be like the rest of it. They would try to do it as a historical thing, and the history of this date is really quite interesting. This is when Moshe was receiving the Torah, at least the first 4 books of the Torah from Yahweh. So it's the most empowering and enlightening and enriching document in the world, and that is, if you want to know how Torah was fulfilled, well, that's how it was fulfilled. But very few people are celebrating it, and my guess is that 95% of those who are celebrating it are celebrating because of what we have collectively done here on Yahweh's behalf.
Well,
I want to share. Go ahead, Kirk.
No, I was just going to say that in light of all that, that makes your books and translations and then JB's site probably the most important information site in the world, without doubt.
I think so. From God's perspective, incredible. I think so. I want to share, and I'm not going to spend much time here. I will only tell you the reason that I came to this particular statement. It's the original Sermon on the Mount. It's by Solomon. I think most people who listen to this program know that Solomon's not my favorite guy. Solomon started off spectacularly. He was raised by Dode. When God said, what do you want? He said, wisdom. I want to be able to do the right thing for the right reasons. And God was just absolutely thrilled that that's what he asked for. And he blessed him in every possible way. But Solomon went way, 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 way south as he grew up. Dode had 7 wives and 10 concubines, and had some less than ideal decisions along the way. But Dode is darn near perfect compared to Solomon. And a lot of Solomon's wives were foreign, and so Solomon started erecting religious shrines on their behalf, so his menagerie of female companions would be happy. But it didn't start off that way. And the most important moment in his life could be as important as any moment in the history of Israel, and exactly at the midpoint. I mean, this is the exact to-the-year midpoint of human history, from expulsion to the garden to the fulfillment of Sukkah. This is year 4,000. 3,000 years have passed, 3,000 years to go. And the reason I stumbled on this particular passage is that I was translating the first, I think we talked about this, the first 5 Mizmor Psalms. And the story I was learning by translating those was one I did not expect. And he hinted at it, I think, a week or 2 ago, and said that I'd been wrong all these years. There really is a second coming. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's not Yosha. It's Dode.
Oops.
And there's all sorts of prophecies about it. And so I was reading, Yahweh making this announcement to Dode, reading through these Psalms, and there was a quotation that was in the 5th Mizmor, where I just had to try. I mean, I had to go where it led, because you only go to understanding if you can make the right connections. And it sounded a lot like me that this was the source of that, the statement that Yochanan the Immerser said, the voice of one calling out in the wilderness, make way and even the way of the Lord, is the way it's rendered in English Bibles. And so I said, well, wait a minute. We've just had in the 5th Mizmor, Yahweh tell Dode, you're my guy, I'm coming back with you. So what's this all about? And so I decided, he quoted from the 40th chapter of what we call the 40th chapter now of Yahshua. So I said, I think I need to translate this. Oh my. I did. And in a future program, we'll share the translation of Yahshua 40. Yahshua 40 is one of the top 3 prophecies that are claimed by Christians. You know, Yeshaya 9, a son is born to us, a child is born to us, a son is given to us. And we went through that and realized that the majority of it not only doesn't apply to Yosha, it can't apply to Yosha, the majority of it applies to Dod. And the thing that was just the fall off the wagon, you say, I can't continue to apply this to Yosha, was the word Gibor, which Yahweh uses a lot in reference to Dod. Dod was a man's man. He was a fighter, strong man that would bow his back against all forms of evil. And Gibor is the antithesis of what Yosha was. So we realized that couldn't 9:6, which is probably the most cited, and then you have Yeshaya 53, which I had to translate it as well because of a word that came up again in Yeshaya 40 that I got wrong. Well, I didn't get it wrong. I got it incomplete. How about that? Zeroah. You guys probably remember I wrote a whole chapter on Zeroah, and when it comes up, I've always translated it as the sacrificial lamb because that's how it's used primarily in the Torah. It's part of the sacrificial lamb. But there are places where it's used where it clearly means strong arm, or it means the influence of something that is associated with the sheep. So like a powerful shepherd, a really effective shepherd. And there's one place where Moshe is called a Zeroah. There's several places where Dod is called a Zeroah. There's other places where the Zeroah seems to point to Yosha as the sacrificial lamb. And so I don't want to translate Zeroah in Yeshaya 40, and it comes up in the Mizmor too. I didn't want to translate it in the Mizmor inaccurately. And so I went and did the only thing I think you can do in those situations where you realize sacrificial lamb is not going to do it. There's more to this word than that. So I translate every single passage the word appeared in. And what it led me to is something that, well, it took my breath away. It took me several days to recover from this. But one of the times that Zeroah is used, it's in Yeshaya 53. In fact, it's the beginning of Yeshaya 53. That is the main, the number one prophecy that rabbinical Jews will never read. I mean, they'll skip Yeshaya 53 because it's clearly talking about the sacrificial lamb and the purpose of the sacrificial lamb. Well, this is how it starts. Who has come to establish, verify, and prove the point of our message from far away? And to whom has the productive shepherd and sacrificial lamb of Yahweh been revealed and made known? Do you know that's how the Yeshaya, it's the single most quoted prophecy from Christians worldwide. The one chapter that not a single rabbinic Jew will even read. It begins, who has come to establish, verify, and prove the point of our message from far away, to report the information and the news from Yahweh through Yeshaya while in a different geographic area and announce it to others. And to whom has the productive shepherd and sacrificial lamb, the Zeroah of Yahweh, been revealed and made known? Well, that was tough for me to read because, I've shared, and this might strike people as odd, but remember when we were having that real horrible breakup with the guys on the Facebook site, and I said, it's not just using my translations in the midst of you promoting your politics and your conspiracies that is an absolute breach of ethics. and it's disgusting. It's a vile thing to be doing, and there's nothing you could do worse in terms of angering God. Finally, we're making a real effort to tell the truth, and you're undermining that effort, sullying it with your politics and your conspiracy. But I didn't say it's just my translations. I always said my transliterations and translations, because the transliterations are so unique. If you were to Google Torah spelled the way that it's actually in the Hebrew text, which is it only appears in these books that way, Towrah, or Shalom, the way that it appears in these texts, or Yahweh, his name, the way that it appears, the transliteration of Be'eth and Be'ereth, hundreds and hundreds of them. And those are the things that people searching for. I don't want them going to a site that's wallowing in conspiracy. Well, Yahowah is on the top 10 in terms of unique words that I talk about the transliteration of it, because it's being used as a title. And that's why God's saying, and to whom has the productive shepherd and sacrificial lamb, to whom has the Yahowah of Yahweh been revealed and made known? And this is the preamble for what is the most, easily the most irrefutable, most important prophecy Yahweh would ever make about Yosha. But there's more than one of them. So, the next thing is that there was one other use of Yahowah that was extraordinarily interesting. And of all places, it's spoken by Solomon, Shalomo. He is at doing what may be the single most important moment, most defining moment in the entire life of the nation of Israel. His father has turned over the kingdom to him. His father has acquired all the materials to build the house. He acquired the land to build Yahweh's house. But Yahweh said, you're too many wars, too much fighting, too much blood. I'm not going to have my house built by a man who's got that much blood on his hands. So, sorry, Dode, but I appreciate you doing all this, and we're going to have a grand old time going forward. And you are my son, and I am your father, and I love you dearly. But it's your son that's going to build construct my home. And so, it is this moment, finally constructed. So you've got Solomon with as many people in Israel that ever gathered in one occasion. This is the ultimate sermon on the Mount. And so he's got his back to the gleaming temple, just been constructed. Ark of the Covenant inside. He's talking about the Ark of the Covenant. He's talking about the Torah scroll. He's talking about all the promises Yahweh made to his father David, and all the wonderful things that are going to happen to Israel if they observe what his father had asked of them. And then there's a change. Still talking to the children of Israel, still at this occasion. This is what he said. Therefore, regarding someone else. Now, the only person he's talked about this far is his father, David. Therefore, in addition, regarding someone else, a foreigner from a different ethnicity and geographic location, who, to show the benefits of the relationship, is not of your people, this Yisrael. When he comes from a far away and distant country in a distant time, for the express purpose of being a witness to and providing answers regarding your surprisingly important and astonishingly great name, your capability to accomplish the mission along with the powerful and passionate ruler who is prepared to lead, and the productive and protective shepherd, the Zeroah. When he arrives on the scene and chooses to pursue this, then he will help interested parties reconcile their relationship by providing those who exercise good judgment with the information and justification needed to make a correct and reasoned decision regarding this familial relationship.
Wow.
When you hear it out of the heavens, coming out of the atmosphere, listen to what comes from the spiritual realm by way of the sky. Radio waves, satellite-based broadband internet connections, within the location where you live, and then engage and act accordingly, doing everything which to show the correct path to the relationship. The foreigner, from a different ethnicity and different geographic location, has invited you to read, has encouraged you to recite, for the purpose of being a witness to and providing answers, such that all people of the earth will have a genuine and ongoing opportunity to become familiar with, to know, to acknowledge, to accept, and understand, to Yada, your name, and come to respect and revere you, simultaneously along with your people, Yisrael. And also, so that they may know that truthfully, your family and this house, which reveal the correct path to walk to give meaning to life, I have built for the family. It is invited and called by your name. Dabim Yomin, words of the day, 2 Chronicles 6:32 and 33.
Wow.
I would ask one question of you, JB or Kirk. As you read the Torah, what's Yahweh's advice regarding what Israelites should do regarding the words, the deeds, the activities of Gentiles?
Don't learn them. Don't
That is
follow
correct.
them. Don't dwell on them.
Walk
Yep.
away, I think, was the term.
Absolutely. So here, the single most important moment in the history of Israel, Solomon, whom Yahweh has specifically chosen and anointed, is saying, now, I want to make this point abundantly clear. There's a foreigner. He is not from Israel. He's coming from a place a long, long way away in a different time. You better pay attention to what he invites you to read, and you better do what he asks you to do. That is just, sheesh.
Wow.
So, I was troubled when we were dealing with Chodar and neck. Chodar is used twice. It's an insignificant stem, but off a very important branch. The neck is something that's used many, many times, and we're going to pursue lots and lots of other references to the neck. One of the things that was just so surprising to me on the neck is that Dode, in his own words, speaks of it as his invitation to calling his people home in the last days. So it's his words that are going to appear on it. But those, Yahweh having a banner that he's going to lift up and thinking that there's a possibility that we're contributing to that. That's fun to extrapolate, fun to think about, some serious responsibility, also a little humbling. just the possibility of it. But fellas, I don't know how you even diminish this by saying it's a possibility.
You can't. I'm telling you, you can't.
It's just no one else.
I know you Kirk, you did take some time over the last few days, even as you were regaining sight, and you don't have your glasses yet, but your eyes are beginning to be brighter. You're focused mostly on taking care of Tara, your wife. But you, in your way, your favorite way, the first half of this, you translated looking at each of the letters that comprise the words.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think?
I couldn't find any fault with the translation. I told you from the start. I said, this is you. I did the same thing with Towrah. I mean, I said, well, of course it's you. There's nobody else that can be. Everybody's going to come along and catch up because you couldn't. It's such a huge body of work. Everything about it has been promoting Yahweh's name, which is my turn on. That's where I started.
Yes.
That's my hot button. Everything about it was the Moed Mikros. Here's the pathway home. Here's everything.
Asher is the first word that got us there. Asher is repeated in this. Yahweh's name is repeated twice. Love of the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So every
a fixation with Kara.
Yeah.
Comes up twice.
Yeah, and Mikra.
Being observant.
The verb, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, who has examined those in 3,000 years? Much less taking us to where Dode is now, where we are in our thinking with Dode now. The one element that would turn on Yehuda more than anything in the world, I think.
Yeah, and what strikes me about this when I read it is that it does several things that were very reassuring. First is that we have about 50-50 Israelites and Goyim that are part of Yah's family as a result of these shows and these books and the like. And I was, my intent was always to focus on the people Yahweh wanted to call home, Israel, and that if fellow Goyim came to appreciate Yahweh, wonderful.
All the better.
Wonderful. Well, what this says is the whole world's going to have a chance to know, because this message is coming out of the sky, that all the world is going to have the chance to know Yahweh's name and understand who He is and what He's offering, simultaneously including Yahweh's people, Yisrael. That part was pretty reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was, here's God establishing His home on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem and Yehudah and Yisrael. And he interrupts this message to say there's a foreigner that's going to speak to you. And he's going to write things that you really ought to read. He's going to invite you to read it. He's not going to tell you to read it. He's going to invite you to read it. And when you read it, you better do as he says. Better act and engage consistent with what he is saying. And that's been the message all along. We're going to communicate what Yahweh has revealed on the things that we need to observe, know, and understand so that we can engage and act accordingly. So God's not inferring in any way, shape, or form that you need to do what he says because, he's going to give you a really hot ticket on an investment. No, he's going to tell you how important Yahweh's name is. He's going to tell you about the three Zerorah, that there are three. Just as on the bad side I've told you that there are three Babylons, there's not one Babylon. Hislop was wrong, and the two Babylons, there's three. And all three I think, are equally important in terms of what Yahweh is calling his people out of. There's political Babylon, the United States of America. There's religious Babylon, it's the Roman Catholic Church. And then there's geographic Babylon, which I've come to learn that the DNA of a huge percentage of the people throughout the Muslim Middle East, they're Jewish. them now, recognizing they're Jewish. So there's 3 Babylons. There's 3 Zeroah. Moshe, the man who brought us the Torah teaching of Yahweh. Dode, the man who revealed how we should observe it and how we can capitalize upon it. Yosha, the man who fulfilled it so that it would directly apply to our lives. The living embodiment of it. There's 3 of them. And this prophecy speaks about them and speaks specifically of the fighter that Yahweh is going to highlight. And it's Dode. So, as I said, I read this. I shared it with a few people now. The lead up to it, I think everyone's going to find absolutely fascinating. The first 5 Mizmor are riveting in their insights, and then the things that they take us to, like Yeshayah 40, Yeshayah 53, and even Zechariah. I made the statement that there are hundreds and hundreds of specific prophecies where Yahweh says, I'm coming back with Dode. He's going to be my king. He's my son. I'm going to give him the land. I'm going to give him essentially everything from sea to sea. And Dode's always mentioned my name, including a Zechariah prophecy that Christian says, this is the second coming because it's speaking of a shepherd. Guess what?
Dode was a shepherd.
Yosha wasn't a shepherd, and Dode was. And he says, I'm going to come with my shepherd. And this is what we're going to do together. And everybody said, oh, by the way, his name is Dode. Save it. And we're just going to go through it, and it's amazing how we've all missed it. And so I was spending a lot of time these past 2 weeks seeing if I could explain what I have innately understood for a very long time. And I don't think I can do a very good job of it. And so I'm going to mumble all over myself here just because this is one of those things which I just feel to the depth of my core. I tried to explain it, Kirk, while we were chatting before the show began. I don't think I can do a very good job, but I'm at least going to try. You might wonder why Yahweh would make such a big deal out of Dode. Dode is the king of the millennial celebration, 1,000-year celebration. He inherits everything. Dode is the only person in the world that Yahweh said, he is my son, I am his father. That's it. No one else. Dode was not just anointed, but anointed 3 different times. You know what the term is for anoint?
It's the oil by...
Masiyah.
What is it?
Masiyah.
No, it isn't actually.
Masiyah.
It's Masiyak. It's Masiyak. Ma'aseyah is a name that is used 22 times. That name is never identified with anybody other than the individuals who are not particularly important. But Masiyah is used 22 times as a name. But the Hebrew word that is transliterated Messiah is Masiyak. It's this simple. While the term was used to mean anoint, and that God in particular is choosing someone that is uniquely qualified to do a job. Now, not all Masiyak are good. Cyrus was a really crappy human being. But Yahweh wanted something done, and that the perfect tool to use as this form of Masiyak. Now, he didn't anoint him with oil, made no big deal out of it. He says, but that's my chosen guy to do a job that I want done. I want Yisrael to have her comeuppance. And so, he'll use the term, but it's the only person where Yahweh says, he is my Mashiach, and he says it over and over again, is Dod. Now, if there is a term, a Messiah, and I poo-pooed this idea that Christianity gave their Jesus a last name of Christ based upon a incorrect transliteration of the wrong word, on a word that's based on being drugged. And they call themselves Christians based upon the same concept, and they think that it's based upon the Greek word for anoint, and it's really to apply drugs, but Christos. But they know that there's a Hebrew word back in there that they transliterate Messiah, and even rabbinic Jews know that there's a Messiah. They didn't buy into Yosha being the Messiah because every time that Yahweh speaks of his anointed and what his anointed is going to do, and when he's going to, this person is going to come and do something, they're going to be a fighter. They're going to bring peace to Israel by vanquishing Israel's foes, just like Yahweh's going to do in his return. And they knew that Yosha was no fighter. He didn't bring peace. In fact, right after he was here, Rome destroyed the temple, carried Jews off as slaves, and then came back 60 years later and completely destroyed the land, crucifying hundreds of thousands of Jews. He didn't bring peace. And so they knew he doesn't qualify. He didn't. Plus, he was never anointed by Yahweh. He wasn't even anointed by his disciples. He wasn't anointed by anybody. They knew it wasn't him. But if there is a term Messiah, if Messiah is going to be a title, then it is based upon Mashiach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one person that Yahweh says, he is my Mashiach. I looked at 3 different times. And as my Mashiach, he's the guy I've chosen to lead my people. And Kirk, you'll like this because you talk about shepherd kings.
Mm-hmm.
He constantly was referring to Dod as a shepherd king. He learned to shepherd sheep, and because he learned to shepherd sheep, he knows what it's like to live with them, to guide them, to nurture them, to protect them, to lead them. My people are sheep. He's the best I got. And so if there is a term Messiah, it's based on Mashiach, and Yahweh's got a Mashiach. It's Dod.
Yeah.
He's got a son. There is a son of God. It's Dod. This idea that Jesus is going to come back and inherit the earth and is going to reign as the King of Kings, well, the only way that can happen is for Yahweh to have lied to Dod and to us. How can he have promised to give Dod this over and over and over again, to renege and give it to a diminished manifestation of himself?
Great point.
Okay, there are hundreds and hundreds of prophecies that talk about Dod's return in the last days. To the time of Jacob's troubles, when Yahweh returns, Dod is coming with him. He's called out by name, and it's throughout the prophets, throughout the Psalms, it's everywhere. How many times is Yosha called out by name in a prophecy in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms? That Yosha is going to come and do this, that, and the other? How many times?
0.
0. Not a single time. There are some prophecies that clearly pertain to
That called out by name.
To Yosha, but he's never called out by name. Never once. Dod is constantly. With Dod, we have in the range of 150 Mizmor, some, I guess it's 35-ish, 40-ish Mashal, plus He's the dominant character of Kings and Chronicles. Plus, there's no one mentioned by name in more prophecies than Dowd. We know what this guy thought. We know what he did. We know what he said. We have stunning amounts of material that he wrote. And we know he was inspired. And we can validate it. We can find sources that go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirming it all. And there's archaeological evidence up the wazoo that speak of Dowd. How many words do we have that Yahusha spoke that we have recorded in a reliable source in the language he spoke them?
0 again.
Versus millions from Dowd?
Yeah.
Do you think that if Yahweh wanted us to know what Yahusha said, that he'd have found some way to record it and pass it on to us in a reliable way, like, for example, the Dead Sea Scrolls, in a reliable way in the language that he spoke it? Do you think maybe?
I'm pretty sure he would have found something.
Well, it would have been superfluous though, because virtually every important thing he said, he was quoting either Moshe or Dowd, or some like that.
There you go. Does Dowd ever quote Yahusha?
No,
not once.
No.
Does Yahusha ever quote Dowd?
Yes, indeed.
What is the single most important? So we know that the single most important event in the life of Yisrael is when Solomon got up there to dedicate the temple.
Mm-hmm.
What was the single most important second in Yahusha's earthly existence?
When he died on the upright pole.
That's right. And what did he tell us? What did he say?
He said, "Why have you left me? Why have you deserted me?"
He quoted Dowd. He quoted the 22nd Mizmor, right?
Exactly. Right.
At the single most important moment of his life, he's quoting the 22nd Mizmor of Dowd. So, how could it be? The reasons are manifold. The first is, knowing what Yahusha said, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but it's not particularly relevant. Part of that reason is, of course, what you've just said, Kirk, is almost everything, and I think given enough time we could get it into everything Yahusha said is cited somewhere in the Torah, Prophets, and Psalms. So we have it. We just have it from the original source. Second, Yahusha didn't come to teach us. He didn't come to lead us. He didn't come to awaken us. He didn't come to try to save the world.
No, he opened the door.
That's right. He just came to open the door. That's all he did. His entire existence was to be the Pesach lamb. Now, it is quite possible, and I'm wrong on this, but there's enough references that I think that the soul of Yahusha was Yahweh's soul. Now, Yahweh does not need a soul when he's hanging around in the seventh dimension, but he did need a soul to take on some human characteristics and to appear in a diminished manifestation. And I don't think that Yahusha actually became the diminished manifestation of Yahweh until the Spirit came upon him in the Jordan, which means that that the only thing that made Yahusha the perfect Passover lamb, because it would have been impossible for him to be perfect prior to that Spirit coming upon him. You know, he stonemason, man. I'm sure he hit his thumb with a stone and yelled out a couple of gosh darns. Is that the Sermon on the Mount is what demonstrated he's perfect. Why? Same reason Dowd was perfect. Sadak. He was right.
Yeah.
He was right about the Torah. He was right about Yahweh's name. He was right about the Mikra. He was right about the covenant. He was right about God, which is what made Dowd perfect. And the Sermon on the Mount, Yosha proves that he is right about God, he is right about the Torah, he's right about the fulfillment of the Mikra, and therefore he's perfect. Simple as that.
Well, you could also add that it has to be so, because the soul that he provided him, Yahweh provided to Abraham the ram, complete.
Correct.
Proto.
He says, I'm going to provide the ram.
You can't take one of us if it's going to be if he's going to provide it.
Right. That's correct. Can't be one of us if he's providing it. Now, my point was, if Yahweh is correct and that the soul is his, what did Yosha fulfill besides Pesach?
Masa, of course.
Nope. His body is incinerated. The soul is Yahweh's.
Yeah.
Soul is Yahweh's. If the soul is Yahweh's, Yosha didn't fulfill matzah.
Okay. Point taken. Exactly.
Yahweh's fulfilling matzah.
Yahweh did it. Well, Yahweh.
Yeah, matzah's fulfilling. Yeah. The lamb's gone.
Yeah.
Done its thing. It's Yahweh's fulfilling matzah. Yahweh's soul.
And Yahweh fulfilled Bokurim.
And it's absolutely the set-apart Spirit and Yahweh that are working together to fill Bokurim.
Yeah, both diminished manifestations. Yep. Yeah.
You've got an entirely different manifestation, somebody that nobody recognized anymore. That was this energy-based being that could transform from energy to matter at will. And of course, Shavuot, when he talked about the fulfillment of Shavuot, he says, I'm going to go away because I'm not the fulfillment of Shavuot. It's set-apart Spirit. Right?
Turned everything upside down in the Christian world.
Yosha came for the express purpose of being the Pesach lamb. Make the sacrifice. Open the door. Did Yahweh tell us that he was going to do that? How about Yeshaya 53? Does a pretty good job, doesn't it?
Yeah,
doesn't Mizmor 22 and 88 do a pretty good job?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Every detail.
Yeah.
Every important
detail. Okay. So he told, I'm going to do this for you. Doesn't it get explained with Abraham during the test on Mount Moriah? I'm going to provide the lamb? Right?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm going to do this. Now, isn't that enough? If we didn't have a single report, eyewitness, of him fulfilling it, what's his track record on getting things done that he says he's going to do?
100%.
Yeah.
I totally
so
agree.
We can be pretty certain that he fulfilled it. And we're given an eyewitness account. First, we're told with Abraham and Yishak where it's going to occur and how it's going to occur. And even when it's going to occur, if you can do your math.
Yeah.
And then, through his favorite son, his Mashiach, he's saying, I'm going to go right into the real nitty-gritty detail. And then through Yeshaya, he said, he's the Lamb of God. Is going to lay the sin of all of us on him. He explained it. Time is irrelevant to him just because he explained it 1,000 years before he fulfilled it. All that means is the explanation is more credible. Is there a braggadocious bone in Yahweh's body?
Probably not. He's awfully humble.
No. He's really, really humble. So it makes him approachable. If he wasn't humble, we'd have no chance of being comfortable with him. He's really unpretentious. It's not Yahweh's manner.
He lived in a tent, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Yahweh will repeat. He says, listen, I'm the one that liberated you from Mitzrayim. He says it over and over again. It's really important for him to convey, listen, I'm about liberation. I'm about freedom. I'm about opportunity. I'm about lifting you up. I'm about feeding you and nurturing you and protecting you and caring for you. That's my role. And so he said that over and over again. He very seldom mentions, I'm going to make the sacrifice as the sacrificial lamb for you. Painful. Yosha, during those 3 years, up until the moment that he quotes Dode, at which time he just becomes the sacrificial lamb. My God, why have you left me? He, for those 3 years, is a diminished manifestation of Yahweh. He admits it. He says, the Father is greater than I. Yeah, by a magnitude that we can't even comprehend. Why would God, what motive, what purpose would God have of saying, this Passover lamb is who you should focus on, when that Passover lamb doesn't even represent 1 to 10 to the 100th power who I am?
Counterproductive.
And oh, by the way, at the end of fulfilling his purpose of Pesach, he's not going to exist anymore.
Boy, that's a new slant, isn't it? Wow.
That should tell you all
So
you really
it's
need
not
to know
in
right
it's
there.
not in God's nature. It's not his purpose to draw attention to a diminished manifestation of himself. Why would he do? It's literally like Kirk or JB. You're having a hangnail, and you're clipping it off, and you say, well, that's proof that I've been here. I want you to make this into a relic, and let's build a mighty shrine and a religion to worship the fingernail clipping.
Toenail, yeah.
Come on. I'm not diminishing in any way what Yahweh chose to do through Yosha. But Yosha is a diminished manifestation of Yahweh. In fact, the name means Yahweh saves. And so it is stupid.
His name literally tells you, don't look at me, look at this.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's why I say, if you don't know his name, you don't know him. And Yahweh wasn't saying of this foreigner. He really pointed out the name of my son, Yosha, did he? No, it's my name, Yahweh's name. It is counterproductive for Yahweh to draw attention to Yosha, which is why we don't have a single word from him in the language he spoke from a reliable source. It's not appropriate. It's counterproductive. That's gets you right back into men having this propensity to worship the creation versus acknowledging the Creator. Well, that's the difference between Yosha and Yahweh. So that's why Yahweh isn't trying to draw our attention to Yosha, but to himself instead. And now, what is it about Dode that makes this guy? And Dode did some dumb stuff, man. And there were, probably 40 years where Dode was the most brilliant, most articulate, most courageous, most inspired, most intelligent man on the planet. No one even comes close. But he had his aches and pains, some stuff that he just ought not have done. So what caused Yahweh, of everybody? Yahweh wanted Moshe, chose Moshe to go do this job with him, because Moshe was the only person on earth that was prepared to do it. There was no one else on earth prepared to do that job. That's why when Moshe kept on turning it down, Yahweh said, look, come on, let's work this out. What if I do this for you? What if I do that for you? But we don't have that with Dode. Why is it that Yahweh picked this guy to do all this stuff with, including when he returns, he's bringing Dode back with him? Why? Why does he draw so much attention to this guy? Why are all of the prophecies that call out somebody by name, the person's name is Dode?
Why is that? He had the most want to of all of us put together.
He did. You know what I think that, it comes down to? Is that with Moshe, who's spectacularly important to us, no question about it. But with Moshe, Yahweh said, just sit down. We're going to take 70 days. You're going to write this stuff down for me. And so, over 70 days, they're writing down the Torah. So, Moshe, hell of a secretary. I tell you what, I would love to have had that job. What a great job. I'm not trying to mean Moshe. It was a great job. But he's taking dictation.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's happening with Dode. Dode is inspired. The words are his. Yeah. Yahweh's inspiring him. The words are his. And I'm going to tell you, there are passages we're going to study where God is announcing that he's going to sing right along with Dode. He loves his songs. What is it about this man that causes God to say, this is the guy that I'm holding up as the example. This is the guy whose life I'm celebrating. This is the guy that I fell in love with. Because of his creation, more than anyone before or since, Dode got it. He understood. He figured it out. He figured out the role of the Torah. He figured out the purpose of the covenant. He figured out the purpose of the Mikra. He figured out who God is and how he wants us to speak to him. He came to really understand that God is as fixated on exposing and condemning those things that are misleading and harmful to his children as he is telling us what's in our best interest. Dode is the only one that does that. And does it over and over and over again. Dode is one of his creation that got it. If Dode, as one of his creation, can get it, so can the rest of us. I can't follow Yosha's example, but I can follow Dode's. I can't walk in his sandals in terms of the inspired insights that he was given.
You can understand.
But I can sure as heck understand them. Mm-hmm. I can capitalize on them. Yeah, it became obvious to me that Yahweh is proud of Dode. He's excited about Dode. Dode is the proof that Hasatan was wrong when the adversary says, why are you so fixated? You're spending all your time down there with Adam, celebrating, and he's so puny and insignificant compared to me, and you're spending all the time with him. Why is it? Listen, give me a chance, and I'll prove just how minuscule and meaningless your creation is. And he did it in the most unbelievable, in-your-face way. I mean, the two biggest religions in the history of humankind, Muhammad and Paul, both admit to being demon-possessed. And he was right in our face, just mocking God with the creation of Christianity and Islam, proving that, that God, I don't know why you're so fascinated with these created. Man, look how horrible they are, how easy they are to mislead, how quickly they are going to go and worship me. You're not going to have, first of all, you don't want anybody worshiping you, but you aren't going to have anybody worship you. I'm going to have the whole world worshiping me. Satan is the god of religion. He's the Lord. And so here's this one guy that got it. One guy. He got it. He sang about it. He wrote about it. He lived it. And so, if you wanted an enlightening moment for Shavuot, I think that's our enlightening moment. It should be no surprise that Dode was Yahweh's shepherd, that he was Yahweh's anointed, he was Yahweh's Mashiach, he was Yahweh's beloved son. He was and is the king of Israel. He's inheriting everything when Yahweh brings him back. He's the one Yahweh wants us to listen to focus on. I've had such a pleasure over this last month as I finished Volume 2 of Observations for Our Time and moved into Volume 3 and began Volume 3 by translating Mizmor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all the things that it leads to. This is the most amazing man in terms of insights and the way that he reflects who God is and what he's offering and what we should come to know. So I'm going to share one other thought too. It became evident not only in this Sermon on the Mount from Solomon, but it's been evident all the way through that Yahweh was calling his people home. That come out of her, my people, that we figured out, and as we were in the last chapter of Volume 2 of Observations for Our Time, which was come out of her, my people, that Yahweh is calling his people out of the three Babylons. And his people, not the church. His people are Yisrael and Yahowah. And he's calling Yisrael and Yahowah out of the three Babylons, and we clearly came to understand that. Well, you aren't going to get their attention if you're calling them to the dead God on a stick. They know dead God on a stick wasn't the Messiah. They know it. It's obvious. They know that dead God on a stick didn't fulfill the prophecies that were made about this extraordinary individual that Yahweh was going to bring to Israel. They know it. And for 2,000 years, they've been hunted down and killed because of the Roman and Roman Catholic myth that Jews killed Jesus. I always laugh and I say, well, first of all, not only did Rome kill Jesus, not Jews. Crucifixion was not a Jewish form of capital punishment; it was Roman. And the Jews had no influence over capital punishment. They had no political influence; they only had religious influence. He was tried by Rome and crucified by Rome, which became the Roman Catholic Church. But I always said, listen, if the Jews could kill your God, why in the hell are you worshiping that puny God instead of the Jews? I don't seem to get any humor out of that, but no. There is no chance in the world after millions upon millions of Jews have suffered at the hands of those that worship the dead God on the stick, that they're going to return home to Yisrael and to Yahweh based upon them having to accept Jesus Christ as their Messiah. Ain't going to happen. And it shouldn't happen. He's not calling them home. In fact, he gave them both barrels every time that there was a conversation with them. He says, what in the world is wrong with you? He had no interest in them. No. The fact is that the man that they need to listen to, the man that is calling them home, is Dod. And the reason these prophecies are so insistent, and Dod is so insistent that his people, Yisrael and Yahowah, listen to him, is what good is a kingdom if there's no people in it? In fact, Dod at one point is saying, I don't get it. Why are my people demeaning me? And you might say, wait a minute, Israel doesn't demean him. Oh, yes, they do. It's first of all, the Christian church, Paul, he only cites him once, and that one time he cited him, he pulled a snippet, part of the sentence from one statement, another from an entirely different book, and the third was a statement that was attributed to Cyrus. And he attributes this all gobbledygook, pushes them together to Dod. Well, Dod is the is the antidote for everything Paul wrote. Dowd is the great enemy of Pauline Christianity. If Dowd is right and Yahweh says he is, then Paul is wrong. And of course, Paul would be insanely jealous because he's claiming that I'm God's guy for the world, and yet Yahweh's coming back with Dowd. How is that possible? Jews detest Dowd, just detest him. The Star of David is like a slap in the face. David didn't have a star. They speak, Rabbi, the rabbinical material on Dowd is hellacious. They despise him. They much prefer Shaul to Dowd. They don't want a guy like Dowd. They're embarrassed by a lot of the things that Dowd did. And so they speak ill of him. And they have the same problem with Dowd that Paul did. They're claiming God's authority. And yet God gave authority to one man, Dowd. They want to be loved by their God, and yet God says, no, this is the guy I love. When Yah returns, he's bringing Dowd with him, not rabbis. So it's interesting that Yahweh recognized long ago that the only way that Yisrael, his people, and that's really important to him, that Yisrael and Yehudah come out of the three Babylons and back to Yisrael and back home, is it's Dowd, their king. The King of Kings, as it relates to Israel, is the one calling them home. He's the one whose testimony they need to accept, to read. When Solomon was speaking of all the promises that Dowd made and the promises made to Dowd and why it's so important that Israel focus on it, and then he transitions to the strangers. The stranger is focused on sharing what Dowd had to say. It's Dowd's words on the neck. And so the reason that God can say, you better read what he's inviting you to read, and you better do or act upon and engage in what he is conveying, is because what he's telling you is
words.
Yeah, exactly. So that has been the last few weeks as we have wrapped up Volume 2 and moved on to Volume 3 of observations for our time, and
well,
I guess
by 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that the one thing that I would like to say, and one of my favorite people in the world. I've never met him. I wouldn't know what he looked like if he walked into the room, but there's a half a dozen people that I've shared a lot of emails with over the years, and one of my very favorite people is Dowd from down under in the land of the Kiwi. And I had hinted at the fact that a week ago that I was recognizing something extraordinary was afoot here, and that I said, we're just not kidding around anymore. We do need to take this seriously. We're not kidding around anymore. When God goes out of his way to identify what we're doing on behalf of his people and says, they're inviting you to read, you better read it, and you better act upon it. And if God himself is conveying that, we need to take this seriously. And so Doda, just after the last show, he says, it resonated with me. He says, I've like so many of us, I have pretty much an unsupportive family situation, and I've got big challenges in terms of my work, and I try to read and I'm very thoughtful about Yahweh and communicate with other members of the family, but I haven't been translating. He says that the thing that makes JB and Kirk, you guys, important to Yah's mission is you do take the time to translate. And I think we have to some extent, we all should be doing that. We should want to do it because there's a difference. And that's what he said. He says, I want the tools, I want the help. What tools should I use, and how do I go about getting started on this? And I just think it's important. Kirk, you wrote me a several-page handwritten letter, and you were talking about the first half of the statement that Solomon made. And you came to one word that's the most screwed up. He says, because, the English translations are 50-50 on getting the first part right. They recognize that a foreigner is going to intervene here, going to be in a far-away place, and that Israel is being told to listen to him. They get that part for the most part. But they have this individual bowing down and praying towards the non-existent temple. Correct?
Right. That's exactly what I wrote.
Yeah, and it's from Palal. And so you did your favorite thing, which is, what do the letters say? Palal has 3 letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything about Palal that would suggest that it means to bow down and or pray?
To the contrary.
What are the 3 letters?
Well, it's a pay, which is words. And
what is the pay? How is it drawn?
It's drawn like a mouth.
There you go.
It's a disc.
Does one bow down on their mouth?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Okay, and what are the other 2 letters?
It's 2 lambs. It's 2 shepherd's staffs.
2 laments. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Shepherd's staffs. Do we know any shepherds around here?
We know a great one in the name of Dove, by the name of Dove.
Yeah. Moshe, by the way, was also a shepherd. Yeah, we do. We know a great one.
So, he didn't really start out that way. He started out.
No, he didn't start out that way. That's right. Yeah. He was a shepherd.
His early childhood learning was shepherd.
Yeah. So. And so it's 2 shepherd staffs, right? And the shepherd staff means to lead, to protect, to nourish.
Yes.
Right? Lead, protect, and nourish.
Right.
Tend to the flock. And this is tend to the flock, lead, nourish, 2 times over.
Mm-hmm. Double whammy.
Right, double whammy. Based upon one's words.
Right. Huh?
Yep. And so the primary definition of Palal actually is to convey that an important message, to make a declaration that's important to be known. And so if you looked at the letters, you figure it out. And I think, like JB, you intended to translate just the beginning of Barashith, and just enjoy translating and filling in some of the things I didn't do, and seeing how your translation would compare to some of those that I had done, and where we differed, and where we were alike, and you didn't get even a week into it, maybe 2, where you realized you just couldn't do that. I don't think it's possible.
The footnotes I was putting in were almost as long as half a page.
Yep, because it's what the words mean and how they're used elsewhere, and what a statement is related to, and how it can be best understood, and then how can it be applied to our lives, and how do we make this transition from knowing to understanding? That's what it's all about, isn't it? So when you're translating, this material becomes part of who you are. It's literally integrated into your nature. You can remember it, you can recall it, you can benefit from it.
You even start thinking in terms of work at times.
Isn't it wonderful? That's the best of all. Yeah, my whole mindset has gone to Hebrew. I think now in Hebrew in terms of perfect and imperfect. I think of the stems and the relationships. I love to think about the fact that all of the verbs are liberated in time and speak to all time. And I love a language where all the moods are volitional, explaining free will and choice.
Desires. Yeah.
But it's beyond that. It's the building blocks of these words. Like, one of my favorite words, yada, used throughout these prophecies, by the way, yada. And then bien. Yada is to know, bien is to understand. And bien explains that the way you understand is that you make connections. All of these words are just, Asher, the word that brought us all together. And then, here we are. I said, okay, I'm going to start volume 3 where Dode began. First word, first psalm.
Sure.
Guess what the first word of the first psalm is?
Asher again, I know.
Asher. And you're going, okay. So the most important guy who ever lived begins his literary experience with Yahowah and relationship with him on the word that brought us all here. None of us are here without the word Asher. I'm not, and none of the rest of us are.
No, not at all.
It's the word. Who would have thought that's the word that Dode began with? And by the way, I studied Asher in relationship to Dode because it was one of the prophecies talking about this that there's going to be a branch someone's going to branch off from Dode, and that therefore be a descendant of Dode, and that when this individual, and it says that every English Bible, when he sins, I won't spare the punishment. And I said, wait a minute, if he's a sinner, he ain't suffering for me. And then we found out it was Asher that was the word that was misrepresented as when, and it should be when our transgressions are missing the way, our revolt against God, our perversions are associated with him. And now we've learned so much more that Asher means to make an association such that the way to walk the correct path that gives meaning to life and that is the most beneficial is what Asher means. And there it was, the first word. He said, well, it went from being an error to something that's not only true but profound. And it was that word that says, well, how many other things could I find that would go from nonsense to sublime? And that's where it all began. And here's Dode. The first word he wrote.
Drink this with it.
Asher.
Too fitting.
It's always so fitting. It's just one of those things. Thanks, Joe. That was pretty cool. So anyway, we never did get back to Lotz and his naughty little daughters. We will next week. But as we're moving to the celebration of Shavuot, I guess the thing I wanted to emphasize more than anything is we're on the right track. We're on the right path. This is really, really important what we're doing. And that the more we can individually do and contribute, the better it is in terms of the number of Yehudim and Israelites and Goyim simultaneously that are going to come to know Yahweh and love his name, become part of this family. The more, the better in terms of the enriching experience. I don't know a better way to spend Shavuot than to celebrate that. And to be appreciative for Dode.
Perfectly.
Wow.
So, fellas, I wish you a marvelous celebration of Shavuot. JB, again, I'm thrilled for you and getting the promotion. And you. JB, for getting your eyesight back and your wife on the mend.
Yeah.
Things are good.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So
appreciate it.
Yep.
What a great
good night.
Shabbat.
Yes. And by the way, if you have the opportunity, since he wants to begin contributing to the translations. He's just one of my favorite guys. If you guys can make a recommendation as to what he does, my friend Dode from Down Under, what I told him was that the tool that I have used the most works very well for me, but it's because I bought it at a time where it was much more affordable than it is now. But I probably have $5,000 or more in my version of it, because I have so many of the things that I've added on to it over the years and upgraded it. But the thing that makes Logos work for me is that I'm a creature of habit. I like things where I can get the most out of my time. And I can bring up any group of 10 or 20 statements, and off to the left I'm going to have what is essentially an interlinear with every word on the interlinear linked to 15 different lexicons.
Yeah.
And in that particular interlinear that I can bring up, it will list all the pronouns, all the conjunctions. You have to set it up a certain way for it to do that, but it'll list all the pronouns, all the conjunctions. It will reveal if the word is written in first person, second, third, masculine, feminine, and then it will reveal this is the stem, this is the mood, this is the conjugation. And so it's a real disciplined way to have everything that you could ever want there. And then I'll have on the lower right, I'll have another interlinear that is but has the Hebrew words and the English, but in a very stilted way, so that if you just want to say, all right, boy, because there's a lot of things you come up with that, because the sentence structure in Hebrew is so different, that there's a lot of things you'd say, okay, I've got to make sure that I can convert this so that it's in the subject, verb, object means that we would write in English, because the subject is very often after the verb in Hebrew, and the adjectives always follow the nouns as opposed to preceding them as we do in English, and the pronouns and the prepositions are combined with the words as opposed to independent of them as they are in English. So there's a lot of things that are just technically challenging when you're doing the translations, and Logos is really good on that. And then the thing I like is that and on mine I have 15 different lexicons off to the left side, and now on version 8 they have as the introduction for everything that I have, and it will say, so I don't even have to look now in my Dead Sea Scrolls Bible. I don't have to look for differences, because it puts right up there at the beginning. It says the variance here at the Dead Sea Scrolls is such and such a statement, and this is where it is different.
Wow.
And so what it does,
that's a nice feature.
Yeah, and then I will even words. I guess I'm getting a little beyond this now, but I was trying to take the discipline, even if it's a word I've seen 10,000 times. I would still take the time to make sure, do I really have the fullness of this? I don't do that quite because now basically I'm not even reading the interlinears. I'm transliterating the word from the Hebrew letters, and I'll do most of the translation just from the Hebrew at this point, the letters, and not use the lexicons. But being able to have a quick click to my favorite lexicon, because it'll build a vocabulary that really helps to fill in an amplified fashion, so that you really communicate all the nuances of a word, and then I'll use Strong's to see if there's a root, and then I have my favorite tools to pull off the diacritical markings and to get beyond them to words that have the same letter sequence. All that's helpful, but there's one tool in particular. It's got a lot of religiosity, so you got to have a huge filter. But the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament.
Oh, yeah.
The advantage of it and I use it like the Zeroa experience that I went on that took me days. The thing that is good about it is it will take the more unique words like that, and it will tell you, okay, it's used here to convey this. And you can click on it and you can see, okay, there it is. I think I need to go translate that. And it's used over here to convey this. Because what you want to do in your translation is you like to have the richness and fullness of the words be consistent to the greatest degree that you can. And so the best way to do that is to see how Yahweh introduces them and uses them in context, and then to see if that translation works across the board, recognizing there's a lot of Hebrew words that have a dark and light side, and the context determines how they are to be rendered. Well, it was Zeroa where, it was presented as the sacrificial lamb in the Torah. And then it was presented as, a really strong arm, typically a shepherd, here, and here, and with these individuals. And, in particular with Dod and with Moshe. And I said, but there's two times that Zeroa is used that's unlike any of the other times, and we're just going to mention them. We don't know what to do with them. They didn't say what to do with them. They said, but if you're really curious, go look at Isaiah 53, and then go read what Solomon said at the dedication of the temple in Chronicles. Now, that is a really marvelous, empowering tool to send you off. It gives you just enough information to go off and make some really interesting connections. So I like the tool because it gives that full palette of information very quickly, and I like the fact that they don't care how many machines. I must have 9 or 10 computers that I've got Logos on. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Many as you want. Really helpful and positive in that regard. But now if you're going to get Logos and you get the tools that you need, it's going to cost you minimum probably of $1,500. There is a tool that a lot of people that I know use. It's called Q Bible. I always refer to it as Q Torah because I don't like Bible, but it's called Q Bible. I think it was written actually for Jews that are interested in studying on their own. And you can set up a page in it that has just Hebrew, transliteration of Hebrew, and then a interlinear where each of the words are individually linked. And it's fast. It's really easy to use, called Q Bible. Really easy to use. It's free. It has a limitation in that it's keyed primarily to Strong's, and you really have to work hard to get beyond Strong's on it. But it's a lot of times that the Strong's, the word that they're trying to support, if you really do your homework, it's rough to get to where they got, and they missed a lot. But for free, online, and empowering with an electronic link to lexicons, Q Bible is pretty darn good. So there's a number of places online, and I just think that, like I had lunch, I guess about a month ago, with a husband and wife where he really liked verifying. He says, at the beginning, I was verifying like every 10th word, and then maybe now it's every 50th word, then every 100th word. But he said, I really like doing it because it gave me such confidence. The material I was reading, I could rely on. And he says, every time I did it, the message was so much more, became so much more part of me. I felt like I really owned the material after doing it. But I just think it's exciting for all of us. And ultimately what we're trying to do with these translations anyway, the reason we put the genitive form of each word in the transliteration in parentheses is that if you're reading it online, you can copy and paste the transliteration in your Google search bar, and it'll bring you to 2 or 3 lexicons that explain its meaning. So it's been written in a way to encourage people to challenge. I got a letter today, somebody that I guess was yesterday. Somebody saying, you like being challenged. Well, they either said or wrote or something that yada is not used in a sexual way. We were talking about when Lot was offering his daughters up as a comparison, and they said, you said that yada is not used in a sexual way. Well, when Adam and Chawah were to get together, it's yada, and then she conceived, and then she bore a child. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't agree. I don't think yada is even used as a sexual way there. It's
used in a relational
advice that it's really a good idea to get to know your wife or your lover or the most important person in your life before you have sex with them and conceive a child. And so they were yada, then conception, and then she bore a child. That's really, really good advice. And of course, in the Barbershit account where it's talking about Lot and his daughters, he explains what it was that was the prohibition, and it was you can't talk to them. It wasn't you couldn't have sex with them, you can't talk to them. I don't want you blabbering all over them. And then when Lot's daughters come to the dad, they're specific about they're using bow. We want them to come into us. But I still think the idea of challenging something, is really important. I had somebody who was writing me about Dode and a mention of Ruth, and how could you say that Moab doesn't exist as a lineage when Dode's great grandmother was a Moabite, Ruth? But if you really think about it, who was the forefather of Moab? Lot. Who was Lot's uncle?
Abraham's brother.
Abraham was Uncle Abe.
Mm-hmm.
Lot was Abraham's nephew.
Yeah.
So they're ethnically related, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, they were ethnically related. Their difference was cultural, not ethnicity. With Moab wasn't different from an ethnicity perspective. They were different from a cultural perspective, and it was the politics and the religion that made them so vile. But here's somebody that wrote and said, you made this statement, and I want to challenge it. And he took the time to, explain, well, this is what Yahweh said. It was only this number of generations. It was speaking about not integrating with him. It was men, not women. And what did Ruth say? I'm leaving Moab. I'm coming to Yisrael. My people are your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you go, I will follow.
Pretty declarative.
Yeah, that's pretty declarative, right?
Yeah.
But when someone writes like that, my thinking is, this is good. Not only listening, but challenging and thinking it through. And there's stuff to learn when we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Ruth, I think, is just one extraordinary woman, and what she was willing to do and why she did it. One of probably the 7 most important women in the Torah. Well, anyway, it's time to bid everyone good night. I know I've blabbered a lot here tonight, but it was very sobering, very, very sobering, and celebratory couple of weeks as I've been going through these Mizmor and how much we're learning about the importance of Dode and how gratifying and reassuring that is, and how beautifully it fits in not only with Yahweh's prophecies, but about his desire to call his people home, and who's made that contribution to calling his people home. And then Yahweh doing something I just did not expect was ever going to happen, but specifically showing that what we're doing here is important, and that he's encouraging his people to listen.
Wow.
And that's got to be a real shock. It's I remember one of the first really devoted to Torah Israelites wrote me, I guess 9 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, and said, "Who are you, a goy, to be telling me about my language and my book and my people?" Here I'm trying to figure this out. I finally figure out that the spirit is feminine. And I'm trying to search to figure out, has anybody else figured this out? And I'm coming to your book, and I've spent the last 2 weeks every day and every night reading it. Who in the world are you as a goy to be telling me about my God, my people, and my language and my scriptures?
Now you know.
Yeah. Who in the hell are you?
No one.
And now you know. Now you know.
Now you yada.
Yeah. The answer is, it would have been a whole lot better for it to be a Yehudim. It would have been a whole lot better. God would have been really, really pleased. But you know how many of them were willing to do it? None. Zippo. So, if you're a Yehudim, you're from Yisrael, you are in one of the three Babylons, religious, political, or geographic Babylon, Yahweh is conveying his message to you through a foreigner, because none of you would do it yourself. And yet, even though none of you were willing to do what he wanted done, he still loves you. He made a promise to Abraham, and he's going to honor it. And if I were you, I'd take advantage of it.
Here.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. Happy Shavuot. We look forward to being with you this time next week.
And to y'all, too.
Talk to you then.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.